Welcome to our Thursday devotion. I spent this past weekend with a whole bunch of guys at a retreat called the Walk to Emmaus, which was led by our very own Roly Roland. It's a journey where men who want to get closer to Jesus put up their hands, and we had 17 pilgrims who came along, and as the weekend progresses, it is so evident that their relationship to God is getting closer. This time is spent generally in seclusion. It's certainly away from society. And during the day, watches and cell phones are not allowed. You are reminded to wake up and have meal times by the ringing of a bell. Certain times are spent in silence. This whole journey is very different to the parable that we see in this week's readings from Matthew chapter 20, verses 1 to 16. It's called the parable of the workers in the vineyard. The parable starts out in usual tradition by saying, the kingdom of heaven is like, and they then go on to say, the landowner who goes to the market to find workers for his vineyard. He goes at several times of the day, 5 times in all, each time collecting a bunch of workers who he then takes back to work in the vineyard. Each time the landowner promises a fair wage, starting off with a silver coin, 1 denarii, which was the going rate at the time. Towards the end of the day, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the final group of workers is approached in the marketplace. And they are milling around, and the landowner says, what are you doing? Why are you wasting that? And they say, no one has picked us. So God says, and this is the landowner, God is the landowner, come. And an hour later, the day ends. And now God is going to reward each of those workers. Instead of starting with the guys that had the whole day and then sending them on their way with the 1 coin, he starts with the chaps who only worked an hour. They get a silver coin. Each of the groups gets the exact same wage. So eventually the people who've been working all day are grumbling a bit because they would have expected a bit more, though they were appointed with the reward of the silver coin. Now, this is very much like our journey of faith. When we get to heaven, we may find some people there who we wouldn't expect to be there. Through their misbehavior here on earth and accumulating massive wealth, maybe irregularly, we are then going to be rubbing shoulders with them. And this relates back to the thing, it doesn't matter when you accepted Jesus Christ in your life, only that you did. Now, in my view, I'm much happier to have been one of the guys that may only be late afternoon that God has called me. But I have so much pleasure from this closer relationship than I would have had right at the last minute. I'm also fortunate in that 5 is one of my favorite numbers. And 5 in the Bible relates to the number for grace. We see in the story, God goes out 5 times to find workers for his fields. The vineyards we know are the world and his church. When I was a kid, I was always the smallest in the school. In fact, until standard 8, I was the smallest in the high school. And when teams were allocated or chosen, I was always one of the last bunch of guys to get called because I was small. Do we judge people based on their looks and their perceived capacities? If so, we would always choose the big, strong guys first, because they're going to have to really work for that the whole day. But that's not the way of God. He looks at our hearts. So as we come to the end of the day, we need to be able to say we have run the race this day, and we have put all our efforts into it. And every person that we have greeted or spoken to, we have greeted with love and compassion. Have a blessed day. Amen.